Hey everybody, welcome to NewWayStories podcast. My name is Jesse, and I was gonna say with me as always is Darius, but the SOB isn't here today. He had plans or whatever. But he might show. Ben, off camera, is here, dedicated, our producer, Ben Salazar. But today we have a very special guest. His name is Tyler Zentz. Say hello to the people.
Hello, people.
Hello, people. Tyler is a friend of the pod. He is a video game enthusiast, and he is quite funny and enjoyable to be around. So if you can hit 3 out of those 4 things, then you have a chance to be on the pod. Mm-hmm. You know, you don't have to be a video game enthusiast. You have to be an enthusiast of something.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. You have to be passionate about something.
Mm-hmm.
And Tyler is passionate about video games. Let me just set it up. NewWayStories, you guys know if you've listened, if this is your first time, we talk about all things creativity, including story. I tried to be a writer, and I have
I feel like you are. Don't
yeah. I mean,
2 books
Rat Race paperback is coming out.
Mm-hmm.
Probably will be out when we release this pod. It's very exciting. But story is important, and I think story kind of intertwines itself and works its way through all parts of our life, including video games.
Now more than ever.
Yeah, I think it's a super interesting vehicle to tell stories.
Mm-hmm.
Because video games are not just, I don't know, even when I was playing video games really regularly, Super Nintendo, things of that nature, it was pretty basic sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And now I just feel like I remember this was even just 10 years ago, and I think it probably has even advanced more. We can get into that, but people were recommending to me video games because it had a sick story. Mm-hmm. That was the lead reason why I should play Batman Arkham Asylum.
It's movie quality now. You're playing movies pretty much at this point in time.
So Tyler is a real video game player. I am very much I'm very much on the fringe. If you want to race Mario Kart on the 64, I'll do that.
I've played Super Smash with you before too.
Yeah.
You hold your own pretty well.
Okay. The Nintendo 64 is something that I could have a dedicated pod, not even an episode, but a dedicated podcast to the Nintendo 64.
So do you remember the first time we played? Well, actually, maybe not the first time, but when we played in Chicago.
So
I was talking a lot of smack because I grew up, obviously, the 64 was kind of our console.
Totally.
That was our thing. And Super Smash Bros. For the 64, I played that religiously growing up.
Yeah.
Shout out to Link. He was my main. And I remember asking Jesse when we were in Chicago, he had a 64 laying there, which is pretty fun to find. If you find someone that's still 64, laying around, you're yes, this guy's a G.
It's not like what is it called when you have the machine and you got, these are all the...
an emulator.
Right, yeah. It's not an emulator.
No, you had the OG,
Nintendo 64,
the cartridge.
We blow the cartridge.
Yeah, the joystick on the 64, if you wobble it, it kind of shakes a little
loose,
bit. Yeah. So I challenged Jesse to, you want to play some Super Smash? He's like, yeah, totally. And I made the mistake of being well, I'm pretty good. I didn't want to completely blow him out of the water with any sort of just going at it. So I can't remember who do you play as? Who's your main?
So Pikachu is kind of and then my secondary would probably be Samus.
I would expect nothing. That's kind of a noob character, so I'm not surprised that that's sort of the one that you went for. But essentially, it was just I was I'm pretty good, just FYI.
Yeah.
You know? And so Jesse's oh yeah, I'm okay. I can hold my own. Absolutely wiped the floor every single round with me, and then. It's bad when you're wiping the floor with somebody at a video game and they go, well, maybe it's the controller. Do you want to use my controller?
We
swap controllers.
I have very old. they're 20-year-old, maybe older controllers. Yeah. Joysticks are really loose.
Yeah.
You're a modern gamer. You're used to the sensitivity, right? The double joystick, right? That's Nintendo 64. Yep. This was pre-double joystick.
The joystick, I think. May have been one of the first controllers to maybe adapt that. You had the Atari, I think the Atari 2600 had a joystick on it as well. But to really sort of implement 3D gaming, it was the first console to really start doing 3D gaming with the joystick.
I remember GoldenEye had you could use the C buttons right and left, right, and use the joystick to move your shooter.
Yeah, that was sort of preemptive dual joystick.
And I remember being like, "This is the dumbest thing ever." Like,
this is not going to catch on.
Why would anybody use the C buttons? I need to kneel down so I can shoot Oddjob in the face, and that's it. Like,
but all that to say, Jesse's very good at Super Smash Bros. For the N64. So don't challenge him.
Most 64 games I do. Well, and I probably have like 30 games, but I ultimately just play 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah.
Like they kind of go through rotation. It's Donkey Kong 64, which when Kate was in med school, I found every banana except 4. I beat that game 96% of the way, and I refuse to look it up. We've talked about this before. I refuse to look it up on YouTube. Because I don't deserve to know where those other 4 bananas are.
Have you looked into the community like around that game as far as like a collectible type game goes? It's one of the hardest games ever to 100% on.
Oh, really?
Like within the history of like video games, it's one of the hardest.
Okay, well that makes me feel pretty good because and then this is like another thing. It was one of the early games that it like logged how many hours you play the game, right? For your like campaign or adventure, whatever. And I think I was probably at like 36 or 40 hours. And I was like, boy, I've put in a lot of time on this game. And then I come to find out people who like really play. That's like chump change.
Yeah. And I mean, when I say hardest, maybe that's not fair to say, but it's definitely one of like the most time consuming because I think there's several different characters that you can play as. I never got to play Donkey Kong 64 because you had to have the expansion pack.
Oh, the expansion pack.
Which I was too poor. I couldn't afford that. So Donkey Kong Country 64 was a rich person's game.
Yeah.
So you definitely were living in privilege.
So did you get the GameCube? Did you upgrade to the GameCube?
I never had that.
No. Okay.
Again,
because I feel like the GameCube came out in what, 2000, 2001?
Maybe. I think so. 64 came out in what, 96?
Yeah.
And then probably ran till, I don't know, is Ben looking this up right now?
Yeah.
Fact checking us here. 2001 seems a little early, but that
is. GameCube is September 14, 2001.
Okay. Very good.
No, but I guess a lot of people my age, I was 6, right, when the 64 came out. And so actually a lot of people my age, the GameCube is their like console because they upgraded when they were 11 or 12. And I just never upgraded.
Same. I had a 64 for a long time.
Yeah.
And never got a GameCube.
You never sprung for the...
no.
Never sprung for even the expansion pack?
No.
Did you have a Rumble pack?
I don't think so. I had a Game Shark though.
Okay.
Do you remember the Game Sharks?
Yeah. You like put the cartridge on top of the Game Shark, all the cheat codes.
Yeah. I had a game. I borrowed it. Like my friend let me have it. I don't think I ever gave it back to him though. Sorry, Joel.
If you're listening, Joel, that's really funny. I do. Okay. So yeah, 64 is my jam. Also the new Tetris is like, it's called the new Tetris, but it came out in 96 and that is a game that I will play. I love that game a lot.
It's a classic. I need to watch that movie too.
Oh, Tetris is sick.
Yeah.
That's a really good movie.
Yeah, you were telling me about that.
But what was I going to say? Oh, yes. I remember. So when did you come to Yakima? The more I'm an adult and I'm friends with people, I never really remember when we became friends or what the like situation was. You just sort of appeared. The next thing you know, you've been my friend for like 20 years.
To like Alex Guernsey out of nowhere.
I guess Tyler's going to be our friend now.
I was actually just telling someone the story today because they asked me that when I first came here, and I think it was June 2012, June or July 2012, and then I was only here for about 3-4 years, I think, before I moved. Yeah,
that doesn't even feel. That timeline feels crazy to me. Like it feels like you were here a lot longer than
we got a lot done in that short period of time.
We got a lot done, absolutely.
We were parkouring at the parks and playing ultimate frisbee and painting the town red.
If I think if we went out and played ultimate right now, like if we got out the 175 gram disc and started throwing it around, I would blow my Achilles immediately.
100%. Well, I mean, I just went golfing really for the first time today. Yeah. Well, the driving range, and I was gassed.
I mean,
just from
after
hitting
you swing
ball.
the club
Yeah.
70 times, you're like, geez, this is like, this
I'm
is
like,
tough.
that little clubhouse over there with that bucket of beers is looking pretty nice right about now. So, but yeah, it's
in your defense, it was really warm
it's
today.
hot today.
Yeah.
Like 90.
Yeah.
But
But anyway, so in those 2 or 3 years, you were like, you gotta check out this video game, and it was Skyrim.
2000, that came out November 11th, 2011. 11/11/11 was when that game came out.
Boom. There you go. Make a wish.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
And you were like trying to show me, and I think it was, there was a part where so correct me if I'm wrong. Once you discover them, you can like portal to different parts in the game. But like when you're discovering, sometimes you have to run for a really long
from
period.
one end. Yeah. So speed traveling within games.
Yeah.
So the games, those games are made by Bethesda, which made the Fallout series that's really popular right now. Well, actually, they didn't.
Amazon TV
Prime,
show?
Amazon TV show.
Yeah.
With Yakima's Kyle MacLachlan.
Oh, really?
Shout out.
Wow.
Yeah.
We'll get him on the podcast.
Yeah. So it's a Bethesda game. It's the Elder Scrolls series. The first, really quickly, game that I played of that series was called Morrowind, and it was very like advanced for an RPG type game, so like a role-playing game. And there was no fast travel. From what I remember, you had to hoof it from city to city to city to city. And I mean, most of your gameplay and time came from that. But it was kind of fun because you would discover new things, like, you know, there'd be side quests or enemies or caves that you may have not found that you, like in modern games where they have like more fast travel. But you're 100% right. It was the next game, Oblivion. So it was Morrowind, Oblivion, and then Skyrim. And Oblivion, that sort of middle game, introduced the fast travel, and we were just like blown away because you could just, after you discovered an area, you could just go to your map, click on it and go and load. And it was, some people, hardcore purists, will debate whether or not that's like a good thing for games. But
well, you were trying to find something, and so it wasn't one that you could like portal back and forth.
Okay.
And so I'm
would
just
you
like,
just have to sit there for like 45 minutes
with like a
walks?
Dr. Pepper? And you're like, no, this game's so sick.
You want some more to drink? We're gonna be here a little while. Well, Skyrim is such. I mean, that game alone is like, I mean, minimum 100 hours.
Yeah.
Just to like do bare minimum on the game.
So that's like kind of my thought of like, you know, 100 hours. You're like, well, this is like bottom tier Skyrim player, and I'm like, I clocked in 40 hours in Donkey Kong 64.
40 hours now is pretty, like...
I will say this was probably like my 5th or 6th time going through it. And so it definitely was, you know, Kate's like 2nd year med school. So I was 6 or 7 or something like that. And so I've played Donkey Kong a few times. So it was a lot of like, I already knew where a lot of the bananas were, you know, it was just like going through them, but then discovering I probably discovered another like 10 or 15 that I had never found before. But yeah, man, the frustrating thing is I know where one of them is, but so the way it's broken up is each world you have 5 bananas that you have to find per character, right? And so on the first 5 worlds, you're finding a new character. So you have to go back to the world with the new character, find your 5 bananas. But then the outside game where you're like trying to get from world to world, does that make sense? There's another 5 bananas for you to find per character, right? And so I know where one is. I just have no idea how to get to the banana barrel. And it'll die. I'll die not knowing.
I'll make sure to lay that in your coffin, that cartridge, while they're lowering you down. Instead of throwing dirt on top of your coffin, I'll just toss the Donkey Kong 64 cartridge. Well, and I mean, to your point too, something interesting to bring up is back in the day. I mean, it doesn't feel like it was that long ago, but like internet during that time was relatively, like, I think I was still on dial-up out where I lived. And so to be able to find this information, it wasn't easy. Like, you couldn't just be playing a game, bring open your phone and be like, I'm trying to find this thing. It was either word of mouth or maybe a magazine subscription, like to those, you know, game companies that you had to go through. But
this is like an old man in me, but I miss on video games, movies, TVs. I miss experiencing it, going to school and talking about the thing. or in this case where you're just like, I'm playing Donkey Kong. My 3-4 friends are also playing Donkey Kong. And I'm like, I cannot figure out how to do this banana. And then there's this like whole conversation at the lunch table of like, oh, this is how you do it. And that's how you found out new information, or someone else is talking about a hidden door that you're like, oh, I had no idea.
Well, and then they'd be like, oh, I'll come over after school and I'll show you.
Absolutely.
It was a brotherhood.
It was a brotherhood, community. Now you got just people just YouTube and stuff.
TikTok.
There's no wonder in the world anymore.
There's no mystery.
Yeah. But okay. Talking about stories. I like my true nerdum really is like classic arcade games. Similar to when you were playing the Elder Scrolls series, we went into this bar arcade in Chicago and there was a Frogger game. And so Kate took a turn. Our 2 friends took a turn. Yeah. And these are all like 45-second, 3-minute intervals that you lose your 3 frogs pretty quickly. Yeah. And then they go, okay, Jesse, you can have a turn. And I go, well, you guys might want to like, you go, after I beat like 3 levels, they go, how much longer do you think you're going to play? I go, I mean, I haven't even died yet. Yeah. I'm like,
just warming up, baby.
I'm going for the score. Yeah. So then they like went off and played, I don't know, foosball or something. Yeah. Classic arcade games, there's something about like the simplicity of like patterns. And that I think probably is still a video game sort of thing. It's on a much grander scale, but you're trying to find patterns, trying to like, I don't know, I guess figure out rhythms of what the game is doing so you can overcome it. But I was thinking about it, and you have Pong, right? That's kind of like the first video game where you have, 2 boards going back and forth and then a ball in between them. That's all the video game was. Pretty quickly, though, they have these classic arcade games that, yes, you're playing the same level over and over again with a little bit more difficulty, but there's story attached to every single game. Miss Pac-Man, one of my favorites. Once you beat the first 2 mazes, it's called the chase. Act 1 is the chase, and it's Miss Pac-Man and regular Pac-Man, and they're going back and forth across the screen. Then you beat 3 more mazes, and they like fall in love, and you get to meet Pac-Man Jr., right?
I've never heard of this.
That's because you haven't beaten 5 mazes on Miss Pac-Man. No. Not a lot of people have. Actually, I might even be wrong. It's the first one is them kind of like, it's a fun meet cute. The second one, that's right, they're conquering ghosts together. Yeah. And then Pac-Man Jr. comes along.
Okay, but when did they get Pac-Man married?
Well, that's a great point. There's a little bit of subtext in there. So, it's a basic story.
I can't play this.
Here you go. And Pac-Man Jr. is a bastard.
Yeah. They got
which is why I never played the game.
Yeah. Yeah. My parents wouldn't let me.
Oh man, I was just have you guys seen Scott Pilgrim versus the World?
Only a couple times.
They're doing the like dance off, and he goes, the original name for Pac-Man was Puck You, but they changed it for obvious reasons.
That's awesome. But to kind of just compliment really quickly on what you're talking about with arcade games, one of the things that I admire a lot about arcade games, and like you said, your friends play, they're one and out, kind of, it's just like, and then you get on and it's like this, they're asking how much longer is this going to take? Yeah. But it's this really cool sort of relationship between you as the player, but also the machine. It's like you versus the machine. Yeah. You're paying for this. You're putting in quarters. You're sort of playing against the creator of this game. And if to some extent you're doing that with all games, but this one is like, I feel like it's personal. Yeah. Right? It's like I just gave you a quarter and I lost within 15 seconds.
Right. Yeah, totally.
It's like that. It's a great mechanic. And I didn't play a ton of arcade games growing up, just because of location where I lived, out in the middle of nowhere. Randall there was just nothing out there.
They hadn't quite heard of arcades yet.
No.
They're 30 years behind.
Yeah, they were still like pigeon mail was alive and well during that time. But I went to this bachelor party in Canada to this kind of similar like Barcadia thing, and one of my 2 buddies who are probably in like their 40s were playing Street Fighter. Yeah, it was one of the most beautiful things I'd ever seen because they knew all the combos.
Yeah.
And they were doing things I'd never seen before in that type of game. Cause I just button mash. I just sit there and smash, move the joystick around and I'm doing things. But it was honestly like, it was like an art watching them go at it. It was like almost two masters at their craft. It was
One
really,
of my
really
favorite clips is this like Street Fighter tournament in Japan, and it's like happening on the big screen. And the one character is flashing like critical damage. Mm-hmm. You can't even see the damage bar,
the health bar.
Like,
it's like
the
just
health
gone.
bar. Yeah, it's gone. Right, any sort of touch he's gonna be out. And his opponent launches this like crazy combo, and he blocks every single move.
Yep.
And then releases this counter to win. And the
I know exactly which video you're talking about. Yeah,
it.
It's hype. The hype is big.
I mean,
on that video,
that is insane. But yeah, man, and then too, I get into I watched a lot of classic arcade game documentaries, which one of my favorite documentaries, King of Kong and Fistful of Quarters.
I watched that. It's
good. Guy from Auburn.
There's some controversy, I think, with that guy.
With the guy from Auburn, or the guy that he is kind of his like rival, Billy Mitchell.
I'm not 100. I remember watching that documentary, and I thought it was about the guy maybe from Auburn. I'm not 100% sure, but there was some controversy about his score or something like that. I have to look into it again to see, but I thought that, but sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, because I
was just going to downplay your hero. Is he really that great, Jesse?
There is quite a bit of, in that documentary, I remember he like beats the score, right? Yeah. Which is a really hilarious video because his daughter is like yelling off screen. He's like, Dad, no more Donkey Kong. And he's just like right there at beating the record. But then he submits it, they give him the record. And then this guy, Billy Mitchell, who has like the record for like he has a perfect game in Miss Pac-Man. He's beat the 256 mazes and eaten all of the ghosts in every maze.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah.
So he had another tape of like him beating the score. And like, if you look at it, when you get to 1 million, it's only the numbers only go up to 6 figures, right?
Yeah.
Digits. And so it goes over to 0. So he's nearing that. And then there's like something that happens in the tape that obscures the score. And all of a sudden it's 0 again. And he's like, oh yeah, that just happened when I was like, putting the tape or copying the tape. And they're like, cool, you got it, Billy Mitchell, like no big deal. And the guy from Auburn's like, what? Like, it was this, you told me, I think that's what it was. They wanted him to beat the score live. Mm-hmm. And then like Billy Mitchell sends in a tape that has like some shady stuff.
Maybe that's what it is I'm thinking of then. Yeah.
But let's talk stories.
Let's talk stories.
So you got basic arcade games. Mm-hmm. They're introducing, they could tell right away, to make this video game better, we introduce a certain level of story. Mm-hmm. And then you have side scrollers. Super Nintendo really is, I really love Nintendo 64. It's an incredible console. I think the amount of like party games that it put out that you could play with your friends, more than 2 people.
You lost a lot of friends too with these party games too.
Yeah. But Super Nintendo, man, the side scroller like platform games, there's something about those games that I just really, really love. But Donkey Kong, Zelda, like whatever it is, there's stories, like deeper level stories. Yeah. You're hitting checkpoints, you're trying to rescue people. And then we get the 64. It ups it a little bit more. You're like literally playing through GoldenEye, right? You're playing through the movie of GoldenEye.
Yeah.
And then I think probably Xbox and PS2 kind of upped it even more. I feel like Halo was a pretty in-depth like story. I could be wrong in that. I don't know. I'm just saying.
Halo has a great story, a great sci-fi story. I think what Halo's mostly credit for is sort of, they say like saving the first person shooter market to console, because first person shooter games were really like PC was like the big thing. And we had GoldenEye, which was great, but like there wasn't really a huge influx of kind of like first person shooter games. And when Halo came on the market. It just, I mean, after that, it was like Halo, Call of Duty, you know, all of these first-person shooter games just like blew up.
So I was going to say,
but the story in Halo is phenomenal. I've read the books too, and they're also really, really good.
Wow, you are a nerd.
Eric Newland, I think, is the author. He lives, I think, off one of the islands, I think, here in Washington, like the San Juan Islands or something. Yeah.
I was thinking I was really into Black Ops when I was like 22-ish. Yeah. I loved the community of playing online, and then you're just like, you know, you're doing these 10-minute deathmatch, team deathmatch. I think Ice-T was the voice in that. Now that I'm thinking, in Black Ops, probably Black Ops 2, it was Ice-T that was doing all of the like, you know, verbal commands. Like, let's get these guys. I don't know.
Double kill.
But I remember trying to play the campaign, and especially in the first little bit, there's more cut screens than actual gameplay because of like the in-depth story portion. To it. Like and I think as you keep playing, it goes more into like playing, but it's, I don't know, it was like 15 or 20 minutes worth of like cut screens in the beginning.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say too, to kind of backtrack a little bit. I for us, obviously, I think we had credited the 64 and the Xbox and things like that having like, you know, as you say, each generation of console, the stories I think get more elaborate and big, but there were some phenomenal stories, even on the NES.
Yeah.
The SNES too, Super Nintendo. Yeah. I mean, Zelda: Link to the Past is a really, really great story. RPG. There's a lot of Chrono Trigger. A lot of these games. So that being, I mean, like the older people, like the guys in their 40s or 50s that might be listening to, would just be like crying right now. Yeah, we're not mentioning like these consoles. I did skip
over NES.
Yeah, NES. Honestly, I'm trying to remember. I was just gonna look up to see if the first Final Fantasy game came out on the NES. I could be wrong on that. It might have been the SNES, but I mean, Final Fantasy has been going on for a long time.
I was going to say, didn't they just come out with another one?
They're coming
like
out
Final Fantasy 17 or whatever.
They're competing with the Land Before Time series for like...
We're going to get them.
Yeah, one of these days. They're just waiting for one of them to give up and nobody's doing it, but...
It was the NES.
NES? Just Final Fantasy
really?
1? Okay. Yeah, really just some great, great stories. But I think just what goes into the stories as far as, I would say... I don't even want to say like cinematic experiences, because when we were younger playing these games, the graphics today looked like they did to me when I was a kid playing like Zelda or something like that. Like those graphics were the most realistic thing I'd ever seen in my life. Like that was real life.
Yeah.
And now what they have now, it's borderline photorealistic. And I always think to myself like, oh, they can never get better than this. And then I see a new sample coming out from there's the one engine is called like Unreal Engine 5, and it's like the most like just crazy engine that they're making these games on, and they're like, it's like you can't tell what's real and what's not.
I almost feel like I need the disconnect, right? Like I need it to be like, okay, this is somewhat of a CG character that I'm playing.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, we're not. Maybe. Yeah.
I just maybe it hits a little too close to home, where I'm like standing over a very realistic looking person and I'm like, and I'm gonna shoot you in the head.
No, 100%. And I mean, later as we get on to, you know, when we'll start breaking in some of these games that I kind of wanted to talk about, like more of my like favorite ones. There's some heavy stuff.
Yeah.
That you're kind of left with when you're playing some of these games, but
to talk about though, I think that early on, they recognized, okay, we got to do a basic story, right? And then it upped it a little bit more to where there's more at risk, there's more depth to the storytelling.
More objectives, more characters, things like that.
Absolutely. And then, but you then get to, I think it probably started with the Xbox PS2 that you kind of start hiring actors that we all know. Like I said, Black Ops 2 had like Ice-T, you know, in between his episodes on SVU, he's like doing video games. But then you were talking about before we started recording, they're hiring movie level composers to do soundtracks.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, talk about that for a little bit.
Well, I mean, just on like the Call of Duty front of this, I know Kevin Spacey he was like the main antagonist in one of the Call of Duty games. You had
and in real life, apparently.
Yeah, and in real life too. Yeah, they literally were just following him around, filming him, and they just sort of inserted him into the game. I'm trying to remember the name of the character. I'm really bad. I'm glad that you're hosting this podcast because you're really great at remembering names. But the guy that played
this is my favorite game
in The Walking Dead. Oh, Norman Reedus.
Oh, I would have never come up with that.
Oh, okay.
Name.
So I think
I've gotten that.
Norman, okay.
He was he was in a game.
Yeah, Norman Reedus. He's in. He's been playing in a couple games too as well. So yeah, it's as far as like now they're starting to bring in Hollywood actors to sort of play these characters. I'm honestly not a big fan of it. I kind of like my games to be separate from my films.
Yeah.
Just because it sort of ruins the immersion.
I was gonna say
for me a little bit.
That happens with like DC Comics. That like their movies are awesome, and we talk about this. The cartoons, not the other DC movies, but the cartoons. And I was watching one, and Neil Patrick Harris is Nightwing. I was like, well, I can definitely tell that that's Neil Patrick Harris, which makes it feel, I don't know, like it does take you out of the immersion a little bit. Yeah.
So it just, for me, I mean, I can understand what they're doing, and I think a lot of times I will watch interviews of actors or actresses kind of talking about the game that or the character they were portraying in this game. They just seem like super pumped and into it. It's like, oh, it's the most favorite thing I did, and all this different stuff. But, well,
I think it just speaks to the amount of resources that video game companies are willing to put into the quality, and telling this story, right? Is like, we have a good storyline, we have good characters, obviously good gameplay, but now let's try and take it up to the next level.
Yeah. What is that next level? Right. Oh, Norman Reedus. Right. Everybody loves him, It's like the zombie killing crossbow guy. Let's just throw him in a game, And
So, but I mean, it just compared to, especially in early days where video game people were like these, kind of the nerds that are in the corner offices, like developing games. This is now a completely, like, what's the word? It is making money for companies, right? And like big studios. It's like big studio movies, right? It's like, this is what's going to make us money is these video game releases. Yeah.
Was the word industry? Is that the word you were...
Industry? Yeah. It's it's a crazy industry is what it has ballooned into.
There's a lot of really bad things that are happening in the video game industry.
Yeah.
It's heading in a not great direction as far as a lot of these companies now, like EA and stuff like that, they're publicly traded companies. They have shareholders to answer to. I mean, this is a whole other thing we could like spend a whole podcast just talking about with just the incompletion of games and there's a lot of crap being put out where a game is half finished and you're paying $60 for it and you're beta testing this game for people. It's like, it's not good. Yeah. You have to almost wait. It almost feels like now you have to wait about a year before you buy a game for all of the patches and everything to be fixed before it's like this complete game of how the developers wanted it to be. And I don't blame obviously the creators and the developers of this game. They're being, driven by the corporate overlords, to try to like get this stuff going, but because they're nerds, they're gamers just like us. They want to make a good product, but anyway, I don't want to go too. I don't want to cry on this.
Let's keep it light, guys.
It's a family podcast.
All right, you have 3 games that you want to talk about. How long have we been going?
35 minutes.
Oh man, we're good. We got plenty of time.
You're like, go ahead, talk about the horrible gaming industry and how it's like the money factor of it.
Games that you wanted to highlight.
Yeah.
What's number 1?
Yeah. So, not in really any particular order. The last game I have 3 games I want to talk about. The last one I'll talk about is, in my opinion, the all-time greatest game ever made. But 3 of these games.
Is it Diddy Kong Racing?
we can be done.
If you're not going to take it seriously.
Did you read my notes? I told you to stop reading them. So the first one I think came out on the PlayStation 1. It was called Shadow of the Colossus. This game was... I didn't play this game when it first came out on the PS1. I bought a remastered version on the PS4. And I'd kind of heard... Again, this game had been out for probably 10 plus years at this point. And I heard that the game was pretty tragic, but I wasn't really sure what was involved with it. But pretty much the overshadowing like sense of the game is what I thought of after I played it was essentially that old saying is like the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah.
So you're this character where not much is said about the world. You're just sort of thrown into it. You have a horse, you have a sword, you have this girl that's unconscious on the back of your horse, and you're sort of riding to this location. And you get to this temple, and you're told that if you slay these, colossal titan gods, that you have an opportunity to bring this girl back to life. I think she's a princess or something like that. So that's sort of the drive for the game, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're off on our adventure. The game, in and of itself, like the story and everything, is just kill a giant, come back. Good job. Go kill another giant, come back. Go kill another giant, come back. And after you finish the game, or as you're playing the game, you're kind of getting the sense that there's something a little bit more sinister happening.
Yeah.
There's like kind of this spirit that's in this temple that's sort of encouraging you and telling you, hey, this is how you do this. While you're playing the game, there's certain cutscenes where there's like another group of people on horseback, like trying to get to your location as quickly as possible, but you don't really know why. So you finish essentially killing the last Titan god. And what you've slowly been doing is slowly releasing this sort of evil spirit that has been contained within these colossal giants. And so you're just slowly releasing this thing, and come to find out, you've essentially caused the end of the world. Like, you've released this horrible demon.
Yeah.
You don't save the girl, like, at all. Your character ends up if I remember correctly, I think the character that you play dies.
Wow.
And the people who were trying to get there were trying to get there in time to warn you to say stop, pretty much like, don't do this.
Yeah.
So your intention through the whole game is that you're trying to save this person.
Yeah.
When in actuality, you're just making it way worse. And it was, after playing that game, I just kind of sat back and I was like, it was just heavy.
Yeah.
Like very, very heavy, that I'd never really played a game like that where it was extreme. Like there wasn't really a happy ending. And there are lots of games with not really great happy endings, but this one specifically sort of hit me differently.
It also feels like kind of a pretty big twist, right? That you're like, that they have you bought into this immersion that you're like, I'm saving the world, I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And then you're not.
I might have to insert a spoiler warning before you talked about it.
Well, I mean, the game's been out for 25 years.
I had never heard of it.
I've never heard of it.
You said it, I was like, oh man, maybe I will play this game. And then you explained the whole thing.
Oh yeah, I actually was thinking at the beginning that we should probably give some sort of a spoiler warning for some of these games, because I'm going to pretty much go over the gist of the games. I mean, unless you want me to keep it pretty light.
No, I mean, I feel like...
my thought was the game's been out for a long time. A long time.
25 years.
Most of it's been kind of spoiled for me too as well, but...
I feel like I mentioned something about The Sixth Sense the other day, and someone was like, oh, I haven't seen it. I'm like, well, it came out in 99, so
we're going to talk about it.
But you haven't seen The Sixth Sense or 50 First Dates, and you're going to... Yeah. Then they spoil it in 50 First Dates. That's the joke.
I haven't seen that one. I haven't seen either of those movies. Okay. Let's keep going.
You haven't seen either of those movies?
No.
Oh my God.
I would if you have I think you can... The game might only be through Sony. You can probably also get it through PC, but I unfortunately told you the whole thing of the game, but it's still a really phenomenal game. And the remaster is so beautifully done. I mean, the graphics are really good. The music in the game is really, really good. I can't recommend it enough. Super, super good game.
Say the name one more time.
Shadow of the Colossus.
Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah.
Kate, are you... Oh, okay. I thought...
She wants to chime in.
She was looking at... She has
Kate's
some pretty
a big fan of Shadow of the Colossus.
Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah, she's actually platted that game.
Yeah.
Platinum for those non-Sony ponies out there that don't know. Those Xbox boys.
We haven't talked about The Sims yet.
And we will not talk about The Sims.
Kate is a big Sims fan.
So is Morgan. She's a big Sims fan.
I feel like we should probably let them talk about The Sims.
And I feel like, well, listen, it is technically a video game, right?
Mhm.
And
we were getting pretty deep though, and I was getting pretty
Yeah, like, I
passionate
was
about what
on
we're
a
talking
roll.
about. Now we're gonna go back to
no, we won't.
EA, who publishes that game,
Ruins.
who ruining the game industry.
All right, EA Sports. It's in the game.
It's in the game.
I played a lot of Madden as well. That was
Madden 99 on the 64 was my favorite.
Yeah, that was a great game. I played Quarterbacks Club 99. It was just, you could do this like, you essentially get outside with the quarterback and you can just juke any player, and it's just, you can score 80 points a game because no one can tackle you.
I liked, was it NFL Streets?
Oh,
Did you ever play that one?
Yeah.
I think that's what it was called, NFL Streets. And it was like 4v4.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you just were playing on the streets and like it was out of control.
I think they did that with, they did a basketball game first.
Yeah, NBA
right?
Streets.
Which makes way more sense. NBA Streets.
Yeah. They're like, what other sports can we do?
NFL Streets.
Football's pretty big.
You're like, yeah, let's play a pickup NFL game.
On the pavement.
On the pavement. Two-hand touch. The game was a bit of a...
It was over the top. I think you could I think it was like
you're like
football mixed with WWE. I think you could like
it's
body
like Blitz,
slam
right?
dudes.
Where you can like body slam guys. Yeah.
It was fun though. It was
Good
great.
stuff.
It was a great game, honestly.
All right, game number 2.
Yeah. So game number 2 is this game I played on PlayStation again, and Xbox just bought this studio too, so now it's an Xbox exclusive, and my heart is like broken because I might actually like buy an Xbox just to play the sequel to this.
So
game.
have you never really had an Xbox?
I did. I actually grew up with I grew up with Nintendo, but I actually got an Xbox, and then I had an Xbox 360, and I was sold on Xbox.
Yeah.
But I switched over to Sony when the PS4 came out because of the fiasco during that time of E3 was just horrible. Like Microsoft's pitch for the new Xbox was really, really bad. It was like you have to be online all the time. You can't share games.
Yeah.
It just was like, it was the most like corporate business suit type console that like, they're like, should we like charge them every time they turn it on too? It was like that kind of level of ridiculousness. And I just was like, yeah, I'm not going to do this. So I spoke with my wallet and I switched over. And honestly, I do really like Sony and PlayStation. Xbox still great, but I think Sony's just is doing pretty good right now.
Yeah. Nice. All right.
But this game is called Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. And I wrote a little something about it really quick. I said, it's a story about descending into madness, confronting one's demons, and coming out on the other side. It's one of the things that first of all drew me to the game is it's all based in Norse mythology, which I absolutely love Norse mythology. And you play as this female character whose husband has died. Again, spoiler alert for this game. Sorry. Your husband's died, and you just have she's just like carrying his head around in like a little sack through the whole game. And
which I expect all of our wives to do.
Yeah, I mean, if something happens,
it's in my my will.
It's in the will.
Yeah. Carry me to Jotunheim on your hip, but
inward hip.
Yes, but essentially, yeah. So you are this woman who the story is. It's really, really dark. This game is very, very dark, and the husband was essentially murdered in an absolutely brutal fashion, and the woman has this absolute mental breakdown from witnessing this whole thing happening in front of her. And so she's trying to essentially come to peace with the death of her husband by fulfilling, essentially, I'm not 100% sure within Norse mythology if the head is missing from the body, are you not able to like ascend to heaven or all these, all these things. I don't know. But if I remember right, I think that was sort of part of the drive. But throughout the game, you're slowly the game sort of messes with you where you'll be hearing voices in your head. So you have your headphones on and you're playing the game and you start hearing voices and people telling you to do things and go certain directions. And at the beginning of the game, there's actually a warning and it talks about this game was made with the help of like psychiatric doctors and things like that to essentially like kind of mess with you.
Yeah.
And It's absolutely phenomenally done. And I mean, you have to play the game with headphones. Like, do not try to play it just on like a TV. You have to be engrossed in this story and what's happening. But the ending of the game is pretty intense. I don't really want to spoil it too much like I did the other one. But again, you're just following this journey with this woman who has just been through the most traumatic event of her life. She's losing her mind.
Yeah.
You're pushing her forward as the character.
Yeah.
And helping her make or helping guide her with these decisions to make as she's just slowly losing her mind.
When like content creators kind of go the extra mile to like immerse you in the experience, right? Disneyland has this whole thing. I get it. Soaring over California may not be the like people's most favorite ride or whatever, but you get up, you're going over the screen and you like start to go over mountains and like streams of fresh trees, and then you like smell the pines, and then you go over orange groves and you can smell the citrus. I'm like, I'm in it at this point. I'm like, this is incredible. And just the idea of like, hey, let's pump in like fresh smells so that like it puts them in here. I love that type of stuff.
They're like, let's pump in this woman's mental decay.
Exactly. Like, hey, what if we like what can we actually do? Video games are supposed to be this immersive experience where not only are you reading and watching a story, but you're supposed to be living out the story.
Yeah.
So if this woman is dealing with mental like things, how can we get the person who's playing the game to somewhat experience what this character is supposed to be experiencing? And it's crazy. It's a little dark, right?
Yeah.
But like
it puts you into a perspective that you may never have ever been able to find yourself into. And you said it. It's the thing that I love most about video games, more so than like I love TV, I love movies, I love shows, but video games for me is the pinnacle of entertainment, because when I watch a film, I'm you're watching it in the third person.
Yeah.
You're just sitting back and you're watching it.
Yeah.
But when you're playing the game, especially with the games we have now, with the stories where they're at Hollywood quality, I mean, you're pretty much living the film.
Yeah.
You're, like I said, you're pushing that character forward. You're making the decisions. And some of those decisions, honestly, can be easy or they can be very hard to make. And I know there was that one of the Call of Duty games. Do you remember I believe it was the second Call of Duty. Was that Black Ops 2?
The Black Ops 2? Or
sorry, Call of Duty Black Ops. I think it was Black Ops 2.
Okay.
And the mission was called No Russian. And you went into an airport. You were disguised as terrorists, or a different brand of terrorists. I can't remember if it was like trying to pose as Americans or something like that.
Yeah.
But you go into an airport and there's just people there standing, waiting to get on their waiting to get on their plane, and you pull up a machine gun and you just start blasting everybody in the airport and killing them. Like that's the part of this intro to this game.
Yeah.
And I remember it was so intense that there was the option to skip that section of the game, and it didn't penalize you. Like they're like, there's no achievements you can unlock for killing the most children, you know, like I just got to get that, you know, like there was none of that. It was like, you will not be penalized for progression points, because some people are completionists when they play games. But I think that was the first time I'd ever heard of a game doing that, where it was like, they really pushed the envelope on that of.
One of my favorite Community episodes, Troy and Abed are hanging out with this guy, Luca, but you find out later that he is a war criminal from the Balkan Islands. And Britta knows about it, but Troy and Abed don't know about it yet. And so she's trying not to ruin their friendship. But she's like, oh, are you guys hanging out with Luca later? He goes, yeah, he's going to teach us how to break the will of an entire village. It's going to be awesome.
Totally. Yeah. It's you know, all of these games and with movies, but games especially, it's an escape. It can be an opportunity for you to be engrossed into something that you otherwise couldn't be engrossed or involved in, that I just feel like sometimes film can't. Well,
I was going to say, I think a movie has to be really, really good that you're in it, right? Like it's not just this like popcorn flicks. You're like, that was an entertaining hour and a half. There are some movies that you're just like, you are submersed into the experience. Yeah. And those are like the ultimate, right? But video games, I think, probably can accomplish that more frequently.
Yeah.
And I like, Kate is really good at using her imagination. And like when she reads a book, she is like, she's in it for these like fantasy characters and stuff. I'm reading words on a page and I'm like, this is cool. Like, this is a cool thing, but I'm not like so immersed. I was kind of thinking about this with horror. I really have enjoyed reading horror books and this different genre, but I don't feel, I like read these, whatchamacallit, people talking about the book. Reviews, thank you.
Did you forget
yeah, I forgot the word reviews. These reviews, they're like, scariest book I've ever don't read in the dark. And I'm reading it and I'm like, I mean, yeah, it's yeah, I get what you're saying, but I just don't feel that. But if I do like a horror film, it like, I won't watch The Exorcist, right?
Yeah.
Like I can't, like, my mom's drilled it into me that I'm not allowed. So I don't watch that. Or Harry Potter.
Yeah. You still haven't watched Harry Potter?
No, I've watched Harry Potter.
I was like, okay, don't tell your wife that.
No.
We're gonna be watching Harry Potter.
Demon movies or like dark spiritual stuff, like won't do it. I have heard that there are some like horror video games that are like next level, like actually really hard to play.
Yeah, out of all the video games I play, horror is the one I play the least.
Yeah.
Because I cannot do it.
Really?
Yeah. In fact, I'm actually glad you went into the segue because I forgot about this until you brought it up and now I'm terrified again. So thank you.
You're welcome.
But the scariest game I ever played, and it wasn't even a game. It was announced at a video game conference. And there's this creator's his name's Hideo Kojima, and he does a lot of really great like horror type elements for games. He's really great at it. And he announced, he goes, "Hey, we got this new game coming out. We'd love for you guys to go check it out." Nothing about the game. We didn't know what it was. It was just called PT, just the letters P and T. And this was on the PlayStation 4, so a lot of people went on and downloaded the game. We played it. It was a first-person perspective game. You have no weapons. You just are in this hallway. It's just kind of like this rectangular hallway.
You don't see a person.
You don't see a person. This is from your eyes looking out. Yep. Okay. And so you are moving down a hallway, 20 feet. You turn right, go down another hallway, and then there's a door. And it's a house, right? So you're in kind of like a hallway. You turn right, and then you're kind of in the, foyer area. Yeah. There's a door on the left, clock and stuff like that. And then you go down into a door and it resets. You're back at the beginning again. And you just kind of keep going down this hallway. It repeats itself. By the fourth or fifth time, you're kind of like, as a gamer, you're looking for things to click on. You're like, is there a lever? Is there a button I'm not pressing? Things start to change. Maybe you start to hear like a baby crying in like the bathroom. And you're like, okay, so you go to the bathroom and you look and the door quickly closes. And you're like, well, that was weird.
Yeah.
You go through the door, you come back again, it resets. Now you're hearing somebody crying. And it just keeps getting more and more intense, scary, supernatural things start happening. Like a picture will fall off the wall while you're walking past it. There's a scene in the game where you encounter the spirit that's haunting this house. You walk down the hallway and you turn right. And I remember there's a light hanging from the sort of the foyer area. And the demon creature you can't quite see it, but it's a female figure and it's kind of looking up at the light. And I'm getting goosebumps talking about this right now.
I'm a little scared.
It was the most terrifying image I'd ever seen in my life. And you as the character have to walk towards it to progress the game. You have to walk towards this terrifying figure and it ends up disappearing. There's a lot of other jump scares and things in the game, but do you have the picture up?
Yeah, that is
Let me see it.
Let me see that.
Yeah, that's the picture, and you have to walk towards that.
Yeah.
And so I remember after finishing this trailer, it was a trailer for the next Silent Hills game that was coming out, which was actually going to feature Norman Reedus in it. The game ended up getting canceled. We'll never know what was going to become of that game, but I think it was going to be Hideo Kojima and Guillermo del Toro were working together on the game.
Some Guillermo.
Yeah. So it was. I mean, people were talking about it was going to be legendary, but after that game and I encountered that situation, I honestly had trouble sleeping for 3 months.
Yeah.
I've never in my life had that happen. I would wake up. You can ask. I mean, my wife Morgan this. I would wake up in the middle of the night and that figure would be there in the room. I would see it.
Yeah.
And my heart would be racing.
Yeah.
No movie has ever done that for me. No other media has ever done that for me, but video games. And it's that act of you having to progress.
Yeah.
You having to make the choices. It what drives me nuts. And they used to laugh at me all the time. Like when Morgan's sisters would come over and they say, well, play that one game. And it was called Outlast. And you're in a sale asylum and you have like a video recorder and that's all you have is a recorder. And like you're going through this sale asylum with these like crazy monsters and you're like in the dark and you have put your night vision on, things are chasing you. I'd be like screaming, like playing the game. They thought it was hilarious, but
I'm like traumatized, but no, no, it's a good joke, guys. I get it.
An interesting thing about that PT game, that playable trailer, is it took the community by storm so much that people are selling the console. That game is no longer available. You can't download it. It's gone.
Yeah.
Consoles that have that game still downloaded are selling on eBay for like $2,000.
Dang.
Whoa. Just for that.
Yeah, purely for the game.
Playable trailer because it was so good.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate we'll never know. I mean, someday maybe things will change, but
as of right now,
we're just waiting.
Dang.
Yeah.
That's intense. I mean, so when you talk about like stories, you know, it's active and passive characters, right? Nobody cares about passive characters, right? Video games are literally the most active characters because you're the one that is pressing the joystick forward, right? You're the one that's pressing A to make them jump, probably. But like you're the one that's doing it, that's making them active, and so you feel it that much more.
There's also a mental engagement too with games, as far as like a lot of games have puzzle aspects to them too, right?
Yeah.
So with the movie, you're just sort of watching, and some movies are extreme. Like when I watched Oppenheimer, my brain hurt after watching that movie because I'm like, there's so much content.
Yeah.
But with video games too, it's the activeness of being a part of the character, but also having the trial and error, dying, repeat, trying to sort of progress through this game and this level or whatever too, which is also really cool, that form of media that you don't get from like movies and stuff like that. Which I heard they were trying to bring back the thing on Netflix where it's like you choose your own adventure story.
Yeah, I've done a couple of them.
Are they good? I haven't really looked into them.
The black box one is interesting. The one that I was like most into was Bear Grylls You versus the Wild.
We did that one. Yeah.
And you're like, I killed Bear Grylls like 5 times.
Yeah.
It's like,
isn't it kind of like a funny like deaths thing too? Like when he dies, it's like kind of comical. You're just
I mean, unfortunately, yeah. But yeah, there's a couple times.
Anyway, sorry to get sidetracked on that horror aspect. That was
super interesting.
Yeah.
The choose your own adventure like movie stuff is interesting to me. I was way into choose your own adventure books when I was in the 7th grade. You're like, if you want to go take the right, tunnel or whatever, flip to page 180 and then you read the segment. You're like, if you want to go left, flip to here. And then, it's like, you died. Go back to where you started. I'm like, darn it. All right, here we go. The final
number 3
video game. Number 3.
Yeah.
Your favorite.
This
maybe
is just
your most favorite video game
all time. And
of
I
all
mean,
time.
It could just be because of when I was playing it. We all have our like nostalgia.
Dude, the nostalgia
factor.
drives for sure.
And I think that this won't be surprising for a lot of people that grew up with the Nintendo 64. But Zelda Ocarina of Time.
Okay. Yeah. You're speaking
is in
Ben's wife's language.
Yeah.
I don't speak it.
Not Ben's language. Malia's.
Is, in my opinion, the greatest game ever made. Like, hands down, the story, the music, just everything about that game.
Do you remember if this came out pre or post Super Smash Bros? And is that what drove you to play Zelda? Or were you like Zelda fan already?
I believe it came out pre.
Okay.
I think it came out maybe a year or two after the 64 released. I think it came out in 98. So I think that as my main character for Super Smash, that might have influenced that a little bit. But growing up, I actually didn't play that game when it first, because in 98 I was 9, 10. I wasn't allowed to play that game. Because it had like magic.
A little too much magic in it.
Yeah, it was demonic, and I would have probably gone to hell if I played it. And a little funny story about that. My brother TJ and I were playing the game in my bedroom, and the character of Link, he's wearing like a green tunic, and he has like a little green hat thing on. It kind of looks like an elf hat.
Yeah.
And my mom came in the room and she goes, "What are you guys playing?" And then without missing a beat, my brother goes, "Oh, it's a game about Christmas elves. We're delivering presents for Santa," because he looks like a little elf. And my mom was like, "Oh, cool, right on, yeah," and just like left the room. And it was just like the most clutch thing ever. It was like, so shout out to TJ, thank you, yeah. But I wrote down a quick little blip about this game too. And I mean, there's gonna be spoilers for this. This game's been out forever.
Again,
but
came out in 98.
Not too much, but I mean, it's a story about growing up, losing one's innocence. Within the game of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, the story is about time. It's about this character who is chosen to be the hero of Hyrule, and he has to go to the future to be able to essentially save the past. And so he lives in this little village out in the middle of the woods. It's very innocent. It's almost like Hobbiton. It's a very Lord of the Rings vibe with like the hobbits are very naive of what's happening out in the world. And he is chosen by destiny to be the hero, so he doesn't really have a choice. He has to embark on this journey. And he has to leave his innocence behind within this village to be able to, now he's in the big world. He's in Hyrule. He's facing monsters. He's facing dungeons. He's facing all this really dark stuff. And on top of that, he also has to travel to the future, become an adult, save Hyrule. And then after all of that's done, he goes through all of that, he gets transported back as a child again. It's like, hey, thanks for saving the world. Now you can go back to try to live your life again in this like forest or whatever. But the problem is after he left the forest, he's exiled. He can't go back. So he's just this lost, wandering child pretty much who has lost his innocence, who lost his childhood to, have to save the world. And I don't know what it was about that story that I just really loved. It was just the story, the dungeons, the puzzles, the characters, the music, everything just was perfect in my opinion for that time in my life.
I don't think that there is a game that I hear about more as like favorite video game than
Zelda,
that game.
Ocarina of Time.
Ocarina of Time.
It's a masterpiece. It is. I mean, if you go on like best video games ever created, like watch Mojo videos, Zelda Ocarina of Time is going to be on that list in the top 5.
And I think it's not even people who necessarily grew up with a Nintendo 64. Like I think people who grew up with a Nintendo 64, that's going to be at the top of their list. Yeah. Like, but even people that younger kids that I've like talked to, they're like, this game is incredible. Yeah, it's really, really good. And there's a lot of, at my work, I work with kids a lot too. And so I'll talk to them. They'll have a Zelda shirt on and I'll be like, oh man, Zelda, Ocarina of Time, my favorite. And they're like, huh? They don't know what I'm talking about. And which is fine. But I'm just like, I'm like, dude, you have to go back and play this game. Like if you like Zelda, you have to go back. Cause the new one, Tears of the Kingdom, but then the one before that, Breath of the Wild. Thank you. Breath of the Wild. I actually didn't really like that one that much. It was a little too open worldy for me, and I didn't like your weapons break too quick. Like that stuff kind of frustrated me. Yeah. But that's the direction that games are going now, like very open world Minecraft type, where it's like, oh, you're constantly building weapons and breaking them down and getting new ones. Like, so video games in that aspect of like, especially like Nintendo and stuff like that, I don't want to say they're like not for us anymore because they still totally are, but there's a lot of game mechanics that I see now that I just didn't grow up with that are in games now. And I'm just like, I don't get this, but just becoming an old man. I wonder if the idea of the loss of innocence and kind of going through that journey, I mean, if you're playing it 13, 14 years old, or maybe even a little bit older, I know for me, the movie Toy Story kind of matches Andy's, the character. He is kind of my age in 1, 2, and 3. And in 3, he's 20 years old and he's like struggling with having to give up his toys. And this whole like, he's off to college and he like gives his toys up to this little girl. And that that hit for me hard. And I wonder if 13, 14, you kind of start to experience a little bit of tragedy in life. Yeah. You've been experiencing death. Yeah, exactly. You've been around just long enough that this is now not a new concept to you. Yeah. Where innocence is kind of being lost. And Zelda's a fantastical world, but how many like young teenage kids are thrust into the real world where it's like you don't get to like experience this childhood that like you used to know.
Yeah.
But now you have to, kind of face these challenges that are met with you, whether it's a parent divorce or death or moving away to a new school or something like that.
Yeah, selling your home and having to realize that you have to pay capital gains tax on that, on the profits you made if you don't.
The things that 14 and 15-year-olds deal with.
It's hard.
The innocence is just continuously lost.
Uncle Sam will make sure of that.
This anti-tax propaganda the whole time.
Just like stick it to the man. I wanted to say one thing just about Ocarina of Time. There's a YouTube video online that I think perfectly describes everything and more that I could ever say about this game. And the channel is called Good Blood, and it's called Ocarina of Time, a masterclass in subtext. And if anybody's interested in like really looking at the absolute meat and potatoes of what I was talking about. That video is so well done breaking down that video game. So I wanted to give a shout out to that channel because it's masterfully done, and it inspired me to kind of also want to come on and talk about that too a little bit. So
I love it, man. I love it. I think those are 3 games that kind of capture 3 different styles of storytelling and what you're experiencing. I don't know if you did that on purpose or if it just happened to be
things
that
way.
And
they all kind of have some dark undertones to them. Some of them more so than others, right? I mean, Hellblade is very dark. Your husband's flayed open and your head carrying around his head. But I think that just for me, a lot of people do, I don't know. There are really happy-go-lucky games, right?
That's what the Wii is for.
That's what the Wii is for. But I think that, if you're looking for like a really good story and things that challenge you, that's kind of where my direction takes me for games. And that's not for all of them. I mean, I'm playing Helldivers right now. Have you guys heard about Helldivers? Okay. It's just a totally tongue-in-cheek Starship Troopers style game. It's very funny, but awesome. It's just something to play with the friends. But when I'm just kind of trying to play something by myself and get a good story. I'm drawn towards the more complicated characters. And I think too that to get into Marvel versus DC, I don't know, I feel like that's maybe why I'm more drawn. Like I love Batman as a character. You and I both love Batman. He's had trauma in his life, and most superheroes have, right? But that trauma for Batman is real. It's like stuff that we all could, apart from being billionaires. But we could all experience that
sad little thing.
That one little thing that might have helped him a little bit. But I love DC because I feel like it's very dark, very gritty, very more like kind of grounded in some aspects.
I was going to say to wrap it up, I love the new Tetris, and what you're doing is you're trying to build civilizations. You break 3,000 lines and that goes to building the ancient pyramids. And it's awesome when you get to, you build the ancient pyramid. You go, I did it, guys. I was the one that broke these
The
blocks.
Enslaved Jews did not build this.
Jews,
I built
not
this.
The aliens. I did it.
Yeah, God did not help these people cross Egypt. I did. I helped them build it.
I did. Oh, man, that is incredible. We, about an hour talking video games. I love it. Tyler, thank you so much for hanging out with us.
I'm glad we can make this work.
We don't have headphones on, but Ben's about to press an applause button, or you thought about it, but then you didn't do it. Oh, you did the sad one.
Oh, it's okay. I'll hit it with
we
did it.
People are clapping.
People are clapping.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Man, that was awesome. If you like the podcast, you should, subscribe, tell your friends about it. Follow us. Yeah, you write in. Oh yeah, let us know your favorite video game. NewWayStoriesPod@gmail.com. Would love to hear what people have to say. Yeah.
Do not send in The Sims.
Do
not say The Sims. We're not. If you see a Morgan at Yahoo, Zentz.com. Do not put that one in the spam folder because it is going to be The Sims.
Man, The Sims is a wild. That's another. Yeah, there's a wild community that
there's people I think getting married, like through the Sims.
Like through the Sims,
Stuff
that's
like
their ceremony.
There's people that are
All right,
performing
guys,
weddings
log
on certain of these live service online games.
Well, we try not to judge people here at New Way Stories, but those people are freaks.
They will not be on this podcast.
They will not be on this podcast. All right, we will see you guys next week. Thanks for listening and hanging out.